My name is Tara Yukawa. As Casey mentioned, I'm a certified executor advisor, and I'm a co-founder of SageVault, and we are a consultancy that supports executors and families after a loss, as well as doing pre-lawyer planning. So to be clear, I'm not an attorney. I'm not a financial planner either, but I am a certified executor advisor, and I'm really looking at the executor process as well as estate planning from the executor's point of view. So thank you so much for all of your great introductions, because it gave me lots of context. And here's the good news. Y'all are going to get a lot of answers to your questions today. We are going to cover not only planning for yourself, but planning for aging parents. And we're going to talk about all of those things together. And, oh, I forgot this doesn't work. Get this out of the way. So I know that we covered some of this, but can we do a quick raise of hands? Who here has been an executor? Faye, I know that you have. We've got a few folks. Anyone who thinks that they might be one or know that they are named one? Okay. Supporting aging parents. Okay. And then who's here to plan for themselves as well? And you can raise your hand for multiple things. Okay, all right, that gives me really good context. Are there any estate planners in the room or estate attorneys in the room? Okay, fantastic. So we're first gonna start with sort of the reality check of what really happens when someone passes. It seems all simple, that if they've got their documents in order, that it's gonna be an easy process, but the fact is that's not really the reality. And I think all of you have at least recognized that, because that's why you're here today. And bravo for having some of these hard conversations and being willing to look at this eyes wide open, because doing a little bit of planning can save so much heartache for your loved ones. I always talk about estate planning being the greatest act of love, and it really is. Having a solid plan in order helps alleviate conflict within your family, helps make the whole process easier for them, because they're going to be grieving after all. So I'm going to start with my personal story. So this is Sheila and Kenneth. These are my in-laws. Sheila is my husband's mother, and then this is my husband's stepfather. That nuance is important here, and you'll find out here later in the story. So Sheila has, we had been trying to talk to them for years about, do you have your affairs in order? Do you have an estate plan? Can we help you? Can we help you find a lawyer that's going to be a good fit for you? And we were always met with conflict, and ultimately we just gave up having that conversation. You're going to hear multiple mistakes like that I personally and my family made along the way. And I'm going to ask you guys, get a little audience involvement here. When you hear that me mention a mistake or something that you feel like, that could have gone better, just raise your hand. And you're going to find that, or I guess here's the hint, is that you'll be raising your hand a lot. So I have personally made all of these mistakes, and that's why I got into this work, because I knew that there was a way to make it better if we had the right plans in place and we're having the right education and conversations. So Sheila got diagnosed with dementia, and that was another triggering event of us trying to have that conversation around getting their plans in order. And again, we were met with conflict. Sheila ultimately ended up moving into a memory care facility where she took a fall and had to have pretty significant abdominal surgery, and was quite frankly, never recovered. And once she moved into hospice, we knew that, oh my gosh, the time is here, and we have no idea if they had their plan together. Kenneth was not in the state of mind where we could have that conversation with him. So being the first daughter, type A personality that I am, what can I figure out on my own? Let's sleuth this out. So I immediately get onto Google, searching every variation of their name and their address, and then I find it. On Williamson County Probate Court, they had changed the deed to their home to a trust. And so that was my first clue, is that I knew that there was something. So a few days later, we get the call from Kenneth that he had gotten the call from the hospital that Sheila had passed, and he was letting us know that he was on his way to the hospital and that he would call us in a few hours. 4 hours go by, we call. 8 hours go by, we call. We call every few hours for 24 hours until finally someone picks up the phone, and it's Kenneth's brother. He had gotten a knock on the door from DPS because as Kenneth was driving to the hospital to be with Sheila, he had had a pulmonary embolism driving down I-35, crashes his car and dies. So we lost both of them in 4 hours, 4 hours apart. And we then realized, oh my God, we're the executors of not one, but 2 estates. And how do we work through this? So this is the beginning of our executor story. And here's where there's lots of opportunities where things could have been made better. And through a little bit of education and planning, how our executor process could have been better. So we start planning the funeral. That's the first step, right? And they both had different wishes. All of their families had, we're dealing with 2 families now, and they all had different opinions on how they wanted their service to be or how they wanted. So the conflict begins from day one. And we realized that they had done some planning, but the problem was none of their investment accounts or their checking account, everything was locked. Without a death certificate, nothing transfers. But we had 2 funerals to pay for. So my husband and I emptied our entire savings account. We had to take out an extra line of credit in order to make sure that our family members were buried in the way that they wanted to be. And we were hoping that we were going to get paid back because after all, we had never had these conversations. So then, lucky, unlucky, they were relatively analog. Bills came in the mail. There wasn't paperless bill pay and all these things that go into digital accounts and things now, and we'll touch more on that later. So we found ourselves waiting by the mailbox. Lucky for us, they lived close by, and so every day that became part of our routine is that we went to check the mail. And so we were waiting for all the bills and all the things to come in because we were sleuthing after all. There was no list of these are all the accounts and these are all the advisors and these are the people that you need to contact if something happens. So we were trying to piece it together ourselves. And one of the key things that we found was that on their homeowners insurance, how the policy was written is that it ended the day that they died, and that their house had been left uninsured for 8 weeks. And so what do? Oh my God, I call up USAA and I just add them to my policy. Another mistake. We didn't technically own the home then. We were still able to insure it apparently, but we didn't technically own the home because we were still going through the process of providing the death certificate and getting the deeds transferred and all of those sorts of things. Same story goes with all their utilities and their bills. I just tacked it on to, the bills that we were already paying. And we treated it as if it had been almost like an investment property. We were just paying for it. Well, come to find out, I shouldn't have been doing any of that. I was mixing estate funds with personal funds, and I wasn't tracking it. I did not have a good bookkeeping system to make sure that I was tracking these 2 things completely separately. So during all of this time, the text messages and the emails and the phone calls just keep coming of, well, where's my piece? I'm supposed to be inherited. Well, Kenneth told me this. And all of that, the volume of the noise of people that were ready to be paid was loud, and it was very frequent. And we were trying to figure out like what's what. And so we said, guys, don't worry. We're going to make it fair. Fair is a relative term. And we had to work our way through all of their paperwork and through every line of their will and their trust to figure out what exactly they really did want so that we could distribute the assets the way that they wanted us to. And let me tell you, there was a lot of family members that thought that how it was planned was not fair. So we had to work through all of that as well. We had to work through taxes. P.S. There's typically 2 cycles of taxes that you have to go through, the year in which they pass and then the following year. So I share this story because it's not unusual. This story, just like mine, even when they thought that they had their plans together, was still really, really messy and really unnecessarily messy. And with that, I'm going to continue on and we're going to get into the meat of what we're going to cover today. 90% of executors say that it's one of the most difficult experiences of their lives, and 74% say it disrupted their personal and professional life. So I'm sure a lot of you are like me, where you've got full-time jobs and you've got family, and maybe you have young kids, maybe you have other responsibilities, and then being an executor is a full-time job. And trying to do that on top of grieving and on top of your own life is so, so challenging, but it doesn't have to be. And so I just want to applaud all of you for being here today, because the things that you're going to learn are going to enable you to put together stronger plans, to have a playbook for your executor or for yourself. And I promise you that you will walk away with the tools to be able to do that today. So 570 hours and $14,000 is the average cost to manage an estate, to close an estate from beginning to end. That's typically what it costs. All of this can be cut in half or even more by doing the planning that we're going to talk about today. So let's first talk about the executor's job and really make sure that you understand the role and what you're responsible for. So a lot of folks, when they think about the executor's job, they think that it's purely legal, it's probate court, it's all of those things, but there's so much logistics and emotions that go along with it. And it looks like this. So the executor is responsible for the funeral, making all those key decisions, legal, bookkeeping, investments, taxes, real estate, if there's business assets, insurance, physical assets, and there's a lot of administrative tasks as well. Feel free to take photos. And there will also be some QR codes to documents that will be helpful for you guys along the way. So those come towards the end, but it's okay to have your phones out. So all of these tasks, along with lots of grief and some of the challenging family dynamics that we've talked about. And it's interesting, right? Because a lot of aging adults that are making plans for themselves, they think about, oh my gosh, when my children come and try to talk to me about this, they're just trying to figure out the money. But the fact is that most of the children the adult children that I talk to that are trying to help their parents make plans, the number one thing that they say, I don't want to fight with my family. That's what they care about. It's not about the money and where the money's going and who's getting what and all of that kind of stuff. The number one thing I hear is I don't want to fight with my family. Yeah. Right. Right. I would say for the most part, and the most part for the people that are wanting to have these conversations, that is what I am hearing for the most part. But to your point, a lot of people, you talk about it really being a business decision, right? That's what this is. Everyone is going to die. And getting this in order is a business decision and is planning. And but not everybody thinks of it that way. A lot of people have a really hard time facing their own mortality. Okay, so the executor role is a fiduciary role. So you have a legal duty to settle the estate. These are the three things that you're mostly responsible for in the role. Is you need to protect the estate. That means making sure that assets don't depreciate to the best of your ability. This could be a home, for example. If a home is sitting vacant for a while, it's your responsibility to make sure that it gets the right services so that it's kept up well and maintains its value. Making sure that you pay debts and taxes. We're going to spend some time talking about debts because that's a really critical piece that you want to make sure that you have visibility into as early as possible. And then distributing assets. So to give you guys a perspective of time, on average, it takes 12 to 16 months to close an estate. That's taking into consideration that most people are walking into the role for the first time. And so that's typically what it takes. And distributing assets is the last step. So that happens like 9, 12, 16 months after, not at the beginning, but that means that you're going to continue to get those phone calls and those questions about when people are going to get paid. And it starts to happen really, really early on in the process. So communication is a big piece. If you are able to set expectations of, I'm the executor, this is my role, this is what I'm responsible for, this is what I promise to all of you as beneficiaries or heirs, that I'm going to be making sure that your assets don't depreciate and that you will be just, we're going to pay taxes, we're going to pay the debts, and at the end, everything will be distributed. And if you can have a clear communication plan with family members early on, it can really help reduce a lot of the noise. So what an executor is not the family therapist or the referee. You are not expected to know everything. And we're going to talk about, as an executor, back to this point around protecting the estate, pulling in the right advisors, right, the right professionals to help make sure that you are able to manage those assets and ensure that they don't depreciate. You're not expected to know everything, and you should not be using personal funds if at all possible, the way that I did. Okay, so let's talk about the first days of being an executor. This is often a really, really emotional time period, and being able to make sound and logical decisions can be really challenging. So again, doing a lot of much of the planning as you can up front is really important, particularly around the funeral and making all of the decisions on how remains are handled and things like that. So the first few days, arranging for the body to be transferred from wherever it is. I will say also that if they're in a hospital, you typically have 4 to 6 hours. So it's you don't have a long time to make this decision. So if you're able to, for example, know which funeral home you're going to go to or things like that, if you know some of those things in advance, because you do have to make that decision quickly. Making sure that you secure the home, the pets, and the dependents, locating the will or any key documents if you don't already know where they are or if there is one. Ordering 10 to 15 death certificates. Yes, you do need that many, because every account that they have is going to require an original copy of that death certificate. So the more accounts they have, the more administrative tasks there are, the more death certificates that you need. And notifying Social Security or the VA if that's applicable to you. These bottom two, a lot of times the funeral home will do it for you if you're going through a funeral home. So just FYI on that. I'm going to pause. Are there any questions?
There's myself and my 3 sisters.
Yeah.
And the sister who did this for my mom, like, barely talks with anymore.
Oh no.
Because it was so much work. It's okay. It's okay. She's the grieving, but you're spot on as far as like the level of effort that is involved. And yeah. So
yes, of course. And this is a safe space, so feel free to like ask specific questions and things like that if we need to, and I'll answer them as best I can. Go ahead and have the Social Security number. Right. Yes. No, you do. Right. Exactly. That's a great call out. Yeah. If you can have copies of their birth certificate, or even their driver's license and their Social Security number, that helps a lot in the funeral piece, to your point. Casey, did you have a question?
Yeah, basically one of my experiences was that my grandmother was over to organize the contact and told them that her husband had passed. And so because she had already changed.
Oh, got it. Okay. So I'm glad you brought up Social Security. It's a pain. So if you can tell Social Security is, I mean, you're grieving, but if you can tell them as fast as possible, if you accept a Social Security payment, to your point, it bounced. But in the opposite, if it were to go through and you accepted that payment after they passed, trying to give the money back is actually a really huge pain. I don't know why it has to be that way, but it's a really huge pain. So that's the caveat. That's a good sort of side note to make. Gwen, you had a question.
I just can imagine. I'm sure this will come later on. But if you have the people who come in are like really prepared and go through a list of like all the tasks that we need to do, and then sort of like the checklist like that. Yeah, like yes.
We are going to cover it, and that's why a lot of why we're here today is so that you can do just that. Faye, did you want to share a story?
Yeah. So my uncle had been in the
I can do
military,
next.
and he was beyond organized. He died, and his wife died. And she decided to change some things.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you think you know what's happening because you have access to things, it's still not necessarily going to go smoothly in terms of dealing with.
Yeah. Laura, you had a question?
I was gonna say, have you heard of an organization called it's the Neptune Society? And it's a weird name, but my uncle passed last year, and I think that my parents decided or just found them. And they do cremation. So in essence, they've already planned for like when they die. Brother and I have cards to notify them. They will take care of the body transfer.
So they
all the
prepaid
funeral,
for the funeral?
and they will notify Social Security and VA and all that stuff. So it's kind of like one less thing that my brother and I have to worry about.
Is that a nonprofit?
Very expensive. I looked into it. They do a lot, and it is reputable.
Yeah, well, that was the
Yeah.
first thing I was worried about when
But
they told me
it's
about it.
a little unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not when you can have alternatives.
Well, wasn't aware of alternatives, but they found it, so it's just like, okay. And it's nice too because it comes with booklets, and I think there's other ones. I think there's one called "So I'm Dead Now What," but it's a way to sort of like write down like sort of your final wishes. Too.
Right.
Like, what songs do you want sung?
Right.
Yeah, that on Amazon or eBay.
Yeah, the Now I'm Dead.
Yeah.
So I'm Dead. Yeah.
There is also an app that's called Death Wishes. It was founded by Haley Hughes, who actually lives here in Austin. And she and I are childhood friends and coincidentally ended up getting reconnected over the last few years doing this work. But she has developed an app that documents exactly what you're describing. So if an app is preferred compared to something that is like a hard copy, Death Wishes is a great solution. Okay, so we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about this sort of hidden gap. And Casey, this is what you and I were talking about beforehand, is there is this liquidity gap between 30 and 60 days of a lot of things that need to be paid for. And problem is we're sitting around waiting for the death certificate. And death certificates typically take 4 to 6 weeks to come in from the date of death and when you fill out the paperwork. But the challenge is that there's expenses that are due now. There's a funeral that needs to be paid for. If their house is still being mortgaged, there's a mortgage that needs to be paid for, utilities, any lawyer court filing fees that need to be taken care of. And all these things on the right are typically locked until you get that death certificate. So there's a variety of solutions. One is the example that Laura gave us, which is prepaying for funeral arrangements. You can also typically do this through a funeral home, like a local funeral home. The challenge there is you just want to make sure that in your unique situation, you want to make sure that you're not going to be moving or anything like that, so that you're not trying to deal with transferring whatever you've paid into for a prepaid funeral somewhere else. You just want to be pretty sure about it. Oh yeah, go ahead.
So I was talking to somebody about this. My husband said, don't worry, everything will be all set up. I think he set up a trust for them. And we actually had talked about things like that about
Yeah.
when I went to the trust thing, I didn't climb it. So I don't know if you're gonna talk about stuff like
It
that.
doesn't make it easier. So to your point, like bank accounts, insurance, if there's investment accounts, for example, that are listed in a trust, they still need the death certificate. Like it doesn't, like in transfer on death that you put on checking accounts, they still need the death certificate. So like I think best case scenario is you have a great and trusting relationship with your parent or your loved one, and you can actually be like a co-owner on the account and they trust you not to touch it. That's how I've seen it work best. Casey, you may have other ideas or opinions. And if you do, I would love to know what they are. It is dangerous. Bank account. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Yeah.
Because you are trusting somebody.
You're trusting somebody to, yes.
Like say just create a bank account just for this time gap and then have.
If so, I'm not aware of anything like that that exists.
I mean, is that an idea?
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
hey, let's put 20.
Where's our smart banking people? Amazing, but that's it. But this is a solution. I mean, that's the thing that we've got to figure out is what is a solution. So if they could accept so in order to get the death certificate, typically the funeral homes fill out paperwork, and then the name of the document is not in my head right now, but it's a document that the Social Security requires as well, that essentially says, yes, we've confirmed the identity, this person has passed. But most banks won't accept that. They still want the original death certificate. Yeah. Just 1 second, go ahead.
To confirm, so having a beneficiary designation on these accounts is not enough. You need to have that, right?
Yeah, because you'll get, like if you're a beneficiary on one of these accounts, you'll get access to it in 60 days or more.
But not at the time you need.
Right, not at the time you need. Yes. So he's your power of attorney? Okay. Okay, so that's a great question. Okay, so power of attorney gives you the ability to act as somebody's agent. So the example that you gave, let's say you were in a car accident and became incapacitated, your son would be able to come in and act as you and pay your bills and pay your mortgage and make decisions for you. A power of attorney is a legal document that yes. As long as they're living. So then as soon as you die, it's over. The power of attorney is no longer valid because you're dead. Yes.
No matter what. So I guess what I'm trying to just understand is, yes, there will
If your son is on your account, he will always, like, as if he were he's not on your account. Okay. He could get in legal trouble for paying your bills after you pass. Potentially a family member, whoever that knows about it. Could he get away with it? Maybe. But is it legal? No. Yeah. Yeah. Casey.
Along those same lines, if you do have investment accounts, almost all of the different investment banks, like Schwab and Fidelity and everybody, they have something on there called a trusted contact. Anybody seen this? Yeah, the trusted contact is like like a JV version of the power of attorney. And it's the person that Schwab or Fidelity or whoever your investment account is with is allowed to talk to. And this came up for me in particular because I had a client during COVID. She was in a COVID coma, and I was able to talk to her son because she had named a trusted contact. So this is something that is a stopgap.
Right.
And what he wanted to clarify was, does mom have money going into her bank account so that her bank account is paying all of the auto pay stuff while she's in the coma? But again, this is only while they're alive.
Right. As soon as they're dead. Yep. Yep. Exactly.
The name one if you don't have one.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Right. Right. So if there is no will, there is no executor. And that means that the court is going to appoint an administrator, which means that you or your siblings or her brother and sister, anybody can come in and make a case to the judge that they should be the executor. And that causes unnecessary conflict and is really expensive. Everybody has to lawyer up. Yes, ma'am.
So my dad doesn't trust me.
Okay. 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 Yep. Yes.
My brother.
Okay.
My brother.
Okay.
And will not be kind for our brother if he is the executor.
Set it up. Yep.
So can there be a medical power?
Yes. They don't have to be the same people, and they don't have to be family.
Okay, well, I've been telling my dad.
Yeah. And on to your point about pulling the plug, he can have an advance directive that defines all of this, that says if I'm incapacitated, like, nobody has to make the decision. The document just has to be given to the doctor.
Yeah, I told him.
Right. He gets to make his own decision, and that document just has to go to his doctor, and it will be followed. Yeah. You're right. I love that word. Yep. Yes. Like if you have planned surgery, they'll set it up for you. Yep. Excellent.
I was gonna ask,
Yeah.
We talk about siblings and, if you don't have good relationships with them, that people might contest it, but can't you name someone who's not like a company or whatever?
You can. There are like
neutral third party or something.
like executors for hire, yes, and you can pay a company, and what they typically do is they take 1 to 3% of the value of the estate as payment for being the third party. A lot of people feel that way. Great. They'll do it for me. Now they are going to make sure that you have a will and a trust and that all of your stuff is documented so that they know what tasks they need to do. So there's a lot of pre-work that needs to go into it, but yes, you can absolutely do that. That being said, some of them do have minimums for the types of estates that they'll take on to make sure that it financially makes sense for their business. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, perfect. So question between like being named an executor versus like not having one, and like, or maybe like you were doing it through a third party, like this like company.
Yeah.
Obviously this company is going to be unbiased and like they will make sure things are done beforehand, and it is a more like planned thing, especially if you aren't aware of like what the steps are.
Right.
Are there any disadvantages to going with a company as opposed to doing it yourself?
Just the cost. Like it depends on if the cost is worth it to you, then do it. 1 to 3% of the value of the estate.
Yeah, usually what I've seen, like with auction trust company or any of the ones around here, I think it is like a $500,000 minimum estate. And there are some nonprofits that will do it for less, for smaller estates. You just have to find them. But that is up to the point they will be your executor and or your
Right.
trustee.
Right. Okay, so I know we've covered a lot of this, but some mistakes that you definitely want to avoid as the executor, making sure that you don't pay the assets or distribute assets too soon. So making sure that you pay those debts and taxes first. Mixing estate and personal funds or just bookkeeping errors, like I did. Missing tax filings and debt payments, and then poor family communication. Okay, so now we're going to get into some real tactical things as well around how to prevent some of the chaos through pre-planning. So we've talked about, thank you so much whoever asked the question on power of attorney. That was a great one. I'm also going to cover typically what's included in a will and a trust. So the will is the document that names the executor, any guardians of minor children, and then if there's assets to be distributed, it will document them there as well. Now, a will, if there's a will only, you will go to probate. So you will need to hire a lawyer, you will go to probate court, and everything in that hearing is public record. A trust names a trustee, and the trustee is responsible for managing the assets that are held within that trust. So this could be a home, it could be investment accounts, etc., where the trust is named as the beneficiary, and then any beneficiaries that will be receiving any of those assets are provided via instructions. So the trustee is responsible for managing the trust. I'll give myself as an example. How I have it set up is my sister-in-law is the trustee of our trust, and my children, I don't want, if I were to die tomorrow, I wouldn't want when my kids turn 18, for them to get $1 million life insurance policy, for example. So I have instructions in there that says, when they turn 25, they get this much. And when they turn 30, they get this much. And my sister-in-law is responsible for making sure that all of that happens as I've written in the trust. Also, trusts avoid probate, and it's private, so it doesn't become public record the way that going through probate would. Questions here? Yeah.
So if there's 3 executors.
3 executors are named?
Yeah.
Please don't do that.
It's already happened. It's already done.
It's done. Okay. Okay.
We are all co-executors.
Wow. Okay. Okay, so here's a key piece of information that you're going to want to find out is for anybody who has co-executors, or in this case, 3 executors, are you able to make decisions independently, or do you all have to make a decision together in order for something to happen? So that will be specifically written in the will on if they can make decisions independently or not. So what that would mean is, for example, if your siblings live in a different state or a different,
Which is my half brothers in Belgium. My half brother and sister are full brother sister. I'm
okay,
the last child.
okay,
Marriage. They're close. I'm not close with.
okay.
So it's like.
I'm going to raise some red flags if you're comfortable with doing that. One is especially with somebody living in another country, you probably want to make sure that you can make decisions independently. That being said, if you make a decision independently and the other 2 don't agree, you're going to court.
I feel like I need to get a lawyer, like my own, because I'm not close with.
Right.
They're close and I'm not.
Right.
Like, would you recommend that to get your own?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm happy to talk further about that. I don't know if there's any opportunity to make adjustments to that. I do. I forgot to put the cards here first, but if y'all need to grab my card, it's on this table over here. Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Because my brothers are actually adopted,
I have opinions on this. Keep going.
So.
Okay. Okay. Bless you for your comic relief. I love it. Okay, so I want to make sure I've got the story straight. Mom and dad are both living.
Mom and dad are both, they divorced when I was like little.
She has children from a previous marriage.
Next marriage. My mom had kids later. My
Okay.
dad raised the girlfriend,
Okay.
but never officially adopted.
But never officially adopted them.
No.
They will not be included unless it's written in.
There is a will.
Okay.
I will get my hands on
Okay.
that will.
Yep.
And I know that one of those men is executor because my dad thinks I'm too emotional
Okay.
to make his.
Okay.
We're gonna make him make his own decision. I need to be executor, otherwise I'm.
Okay. So I'm gonna give I'm gonna give an example of this woman who's gone viral on TikTok. She shared this story, so I think it's a good one. So mom and dad, mom had her and her sister from a first marriage. They get married, she gets remarried, and this dad essentially like raises the two girls. And then they legally adopt, the two of them, a brother. They're in Oklahoma, so some of the intestacy laws are slightly different, but they both die without a will. Mom dies first. Husband gets everything. Everything goes to the adopted son, and the two girls get left out. Like, that wasn't the intention. If they had been living, of course, that's not the choice that they would make. But with the intestacy laws of not having a will in Oklahoma, that's how it all worked. Is it went to the surviving spouse, and then the surviving spouse's only adopted or biological legal child is this one. And if he would have had to make the choice, which he didn't. He could have said, okay, we're going to split it 3 ways, but he didn't make that choice. So that's just an example how blended families can get particularly challenging. So you want to make sure that that is thought about in your plan, and you're also looking at the specific state laws where your loved one resides. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is such good information.
Oh, good.
And part of it relies on the person making the choices.
Yes.
What power do we have over our own people to make them do the right thing?
Yeah.
Which they are not currently doing.
Right.
In my personal story.
Yeah.
What do you thought?
I have thoughts on how to have these. If your loved one has really strong opinions, just continue to try to have the conversation. If your loved one is just uncomfortable with the conversations and is burying their heads in the sand instead of actually having it, I do have an opinion. So I'll give an example. My tendency as firstborn type A daughter is like when I went in to talk to my dad about this, I'm like, I'm ready. I've got my checklist. I've got my list of all the things that we need to talk about because I want to make sure that my dad has a solid plan. We have a blended family with 4 kids, and it's going to be complicated and messy. And I know that's not what my dad wants. However, when I went in with a loving heart to try to help him work through this, he thought that I was jockeying for money. Which is like the conversation I had before. I'm like, Dad, I don't want your money. I don't want to fight with my siblings. I want to make sure that your wishes are followed. And when I changed the conversation to focusing on his values and started thinking about, Dad, what's important to you? What in your life has brought you the most joy? This is a coffee conversation, right? You're sitting at breakfast early one morning and you're talking about his life, talking about what he's most proud of and what you'll start to get, because this conversation is not a one-time conversation. This is something that happens over a series of discussions where you'll start to get pieces. Where I found out my dad wants, a priority for my dad is to make sure that the kids don't fight. A priority for my dad is that we don't sell his art. A priority for my dad is It's to make sure that his grandkids get educated. And from there, I was like, okay, we can make a plan and you can leave a legacy from that. Let's build on that. And it completely changed the dynamic of the conversation because it was about love and their values and what they're most proud of in their life instead of just moving assets around. So that would be how I would recommend approaching the conversation for someone who's willing to have the conversation. But I recognize that not every personality is willing to. Mm. Yeah. Yep. You can hire someone like me and I can help. I do not, well, I can't, unfortunately, I can't hold her hand in Ohio. But yeah, no, you're exactly right. Another thing is you can have a notary come to her house and you can set it up so that people will come to her to sign the paperwork is the other option there.
And I just talked with that lawyer and gave her the bill and everything. And just said, oh, after lunch, we're gonna go over to see this guy. And we went over and saw it, and it was really like articulate guy. And said, I want to find out what you want. He was able to talk my dad through it and finalize it. That worked really well.
So basically just put it in the car.
I did, thank you.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. I have a QR code at the end that has all the documents that I'm sharing, but this one in particular is the core components of an estate plan. So it includes the will, the trust, the power of attorney, et cetera. And all of that is located in that document. I'll wait just a second in case any of you guys are grabbing that. It's on my website. Yep. If you go under resources, there's a section called free downloads. And so everything is in there. Oh, sorry, I thought there was a question. But I'll share a direct link to that section at the end. Okay, so obviously executors need clarity. What we need is we need to have a will and a trust. I'm also going to recommend that if there's opportunities to consolidate portfolios with trusted advisors, I highly recommend it, particularly once you get to retirement age. If you've got 401ks from your last 5 companies and you've got these random accounts that are all over the place, sending your executor on a wild goose chase to track all of that down is really, really difficult. So I recommend starting to consolidate those, at least starting at retirement age. And then you can make a list for your executor that says, these are the accounts, these are the 3 people you need to call. And then they can do that work rather than trying to have them sit by the mailbox, or hopefully they're getting into your email to try to piece it together themselves. So I call this creating a legacy inventory. I have a workbook that you can also download here. And it walks through financial assets, physical assets, all of the inventoried items that your executor will need are all listed in this workbook. So feel free to grab that as well. There was a question. Yes, ma'am.
I did my will, I got all that information from me. They go to that practice, and she would have access to all of that, or is that just
So here's what I've seen. Typically, the reason that attorneys ask for that list of documents is because, or those list of accounts, and they also asked you how much was in those accounts, right? That's why. They want to know how big your estate is to determine if they need to strategically make tax planning. So for You have to pay estate tax if your estate is worth more than $14 million, or I think it's 13.9. And the estate tax is hefty. It's like 40%. So that's typically why attorneys ask that question, to determine, do we need to start looking at an irrevocable trust, which I'm not going to get into that today, but irrevocable trust can be used as strategic tax planning. It's typically for money that you're not going to spend in your lifetime, that you want to be generational wealth, but it can also help protect assets for Medicaid buy down and things like that. Again, that's complex, and we're not going to get into that today. But that's typically why they ask that question. So your attorney likely doesn't hang on to that. Plus, that changes over time. Right.
Well, I was gonna ask,
Yes, ma'am. Yes. That. Yes.
I think
Yes.
my parents had their will on a thumb drive.
It's not a thumb
At
drive.
whatever point,
Like,
that becomes obsolete.
I don't think I have a USB port in my laptop. Like,
So would the attorney have an actual copy?
the attorney is going to have, that's a great question. So the original copy is with your loved one. The attorney has a, what? Like a paper hard copy with blue ink.
Usually like a fake leather binder.
Right.
Okay.
Your loved one has that in their possession, and the attorney has a copy. And then they typically deliver a thumb drive or a CD that has the digital copy there. And so what I've done with mine is I have cloud storage that has my legacy inventory, that has the digital copy of my will and my trust, and that has a letter to my executor. And I have it set up so that she can see it now. But I have a good relationship with her, so it's not something that I'm concerned about. But you can also set it up. Now, granted, this will delay things. You can set it up like with what Gmail and Google Drive allows you to do is, after a certain period of inactivity, it will default, it'll send an email to whoever you've named, and then it says you now have access to their full Google Drive, and you could go in that way too. Yes, we're gonna talk about that in a minute. There's 30 minutes of work around that you can do, and I have a slide on that as well. Okay, any other questions before I move on? Okay. Good timing. Okay. If you do nothing else this weekend, do this. So this is how to handle digital assets. This QR code is going to take you to an article that I wrote about how to handle the first two bullets. So for memorializing your social accounts, a lot of this is to prevent fraud, and to make sure that if you have a Facebook account, that when you pass, your executor can confirm with Facebook, for example, that you've passed away. They will memorialize the account, which basically means that they lock it down so that only the executor has access to it. Nobody can take it and steal your identity and do crazy things with it. You won't be able to use Facebook to be able to log into different online portals and things like that. Then Google, Apple, and Android all also have a way to identify somebody who gains access to your account when you pass. So I'll give a couple of examples. So for Google, they do it based upon inactivity. So if you don't check your email for 90 days, then it will alert the person that you've named, and they will get an email and say, you now have access to this person's account, and it will give them full access to, and you can choose what they have access to. So if it's everything, it will include things like your Gmail, your Google Drive, your Chrome, all of your Chrome passwords and things like that. Guys, when I was writing this article, I looked in my Chrome just for giggles, to see how many passwords I had saved. Over 700 passwords saved in my Chrome, and it's random stuff, right? Like, it's not all bank passwords and things that are important, but like oh my God, so much stuff. And again, like that's why this is becoming more and more important with the younger generations that are less analog and more digital. Being able to have your executor have access to your email, to be able to know the things that you're subscribed to know how to turn off Netflix and HBO and all of those things so that they're not continuing to try to bill and bounce on accounts. Also having a password management system. You can use 1Password or Apple has one. And that will help address all of the online subscription paperless billing challenges. But doing these first two things literally takes 30 minutes. So highly, highly recommend doing that. And like I said, there's instructions at this QR code. So we talked before about, my colorful wheel of all of the tasks that you're expected to do as an executor, and you are not expected to be the expert. What you are responsible for is to do what is in the best interest of the estate, which is why making sure that you hire the right professionals to be able to help you is really, really critical. And those are estate expenses. So as the executor, as your bookkeeping, if you need to hire people to help with these different tasks, you don't pay for it out of your personal checking account. You pay for it out of the estate. And this includes things like the attorney, an accountant or a CPA, a financial advisor, real estate agent, appraiser, insurance agent, or somebody like me, like an executor advisor. Yes, ma'am. It's mostly legal on that $14,000. But to answer your question, yes. But if you were to break that down, a huge chunk of that is typically the legal piece. And we covered some of this already, but really just going back to focusing on the purpose of this planning is to protect your loved ones. Talking to parents, this is what I mentioned before about making sure that you're starting with their values instead of just the paperwork. Don't expect it to be done in a day, that it's several conversations over a period of time. And if you do really need to get to the crux of the documents and things like that, using stories, using examples of, hey, Sally down the street that I grew up next to, did you know that her mom died? And these are all the things that she had to deal with. And I really don't want that for us. And I know that you don't want that for our family. How can I help? And then if you are making plans for yourself and you're talking to adult children, and there's a lot of adult children that can't even fathom losing their parent. And it's really, really emotional for them. But if they are your executor, it is so important to have these conversations so they can go into this role eyes wide open, knowing what to expect, have the opportunity to ask questions. So making sure that you're really transparent, sharing that you have a will and a trust, encouraging them to read it and understand what your wishes are, giving them tools. So simply telling them, don't worry about it, we have a will, guys, that's not enough. They need to be able to look at it, have the opportunity to ask questions, and it will probably trigger them to come to sessions like this to better understand what the role is and what's to be expected, and give them an opportunity to ask questions. And you may even find an opportunity where there's potentially gaps that you guys can have time to remedy. And then framing the conversation that this is protection. This is about love and making sure that that it's protecting the family and not just assets. All right, that's it. Thank you guys so much for your time. All of the free downloads that I had QR codes throughout, you can see those at the top one. And then I also have a weekly newsletter, which you can subscribe to at the bottom QR code. And I'm happy to answer any other questions, or Casey, if there's anything else you want to do or say to close us out, I'm happy to do that too.
Yeah, we have plenty of time left. Does anybody? Yeah.
I have a will and a trust, and didn't mention didn't really like the trust, and so I was curious about that.
No, I do like the trust. Most people need a trust. I think it depends on the investment, and I'm going to lean on Casey to probably make a recommendation there on which assets should be in a trust versus not. A lot of it depends on how you want the assets to be distributed. I don't know if you can give a more specific example. I might be able to guide you, but
I've got one if you don't. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. So for example, my in-laws, my father-in-law Jim passed away in 23 and got convinced by somebody that he needed a big elaborate trust. And they put all of his assets in it. And so then when he passed away, it was a marital trust, so everything passed to his wife Carol. Carol passed away in May. And the trust fills out who everything goes to, right? And they did a good job putting everything in the trust, like the house and all of the investment accounts and their IRA. So IRAs don't need to be in a trust.
correct.
Yeah.
Or
So
401ks.
401ks and IRAs. Remember, it stands for individual retirement account, right? And it's the kind of account, it's a contract asset. It has named beneficiaries on it. Okay? Yeah. And so by putting it in the trust, they made our life even more complicated. It's a real pain in the rear.
So shouldn't that have been the trust lawyer's fault?
Yeah, and also the financial advisor that did this, and then also did not update it to Carol after Jim had been dead for 2 years. So we had to reopen Jim's estate. We have to pay estate taxes again. We had to get a new estate ID number. I mean, it's a huge pain in the ass. So don't do that. But in general, the trust is great. And the other little commercial I would say is when you're naming your beneficiaries, we all know to put a primary on there, right? Like, your husband or your kid or whoever. Name a contingent beneficiary.
Yes.
Because like Tara's example, if the two people pass away at the same time, then you need to have somebody named on there. Otherwise, it goes into the estate. So specifically, I'm thinking of IRAs and 401ks and life insurance policies and all that kind of stuff that has a named beneficiary. Your transfer on death accounts and all of your other what the financial world calls your taxable accounts, the stuff that you get an annual 1099 for, all of those is very, very useful, but it's not quite as imperative. But having that contingent beneficiary means that if my husband and I die at the same time and we were each other's beneficiaries, at least there's a backup.
Right. Exactly. And that would be the only caveat to where a trust may be important. If you have, for example, if you have multiple kids and you wanted your contingency to be your kids, that's then split in whatever way you want. I think that's the only use case I can think of for putting it in a trust.
Yes. Freaking purse surveys, you guys. So what it means is I have 2 kids. I name them both as my heirs, but I don't name them per stirpe. One kid dies, everything goes to the other kid, my grandkids are screwed. Per stirpe means it travels down the line of that lineage or whatever.
Yes.
So that if one of my kids and I are in the same car wreck, and I have these grandkids gets my daughter's half, and my son gets his half. Look for first stirpe. This is one of those things I didn't know about. First word, P-E-R. I'm sure it's Latin. Second word, S-T-I-R-P-E-S. Stir.
Let me see.
Yeah, like a messed up stripe.
Isn't there a couple of minor children?
Exactly. A
Yes.
minor child is going to go to the guardian. Right? And so that is exactly it. I have minor children. Like, I don't actually have adult children. This is just for show. My minor children, so my contingent beneficiary is the trust that will be established when we die. So we don't really have a trust yet. It establishes on our death. So right now, Dave gets everything if he's in charge of the kids. And then if he and I are like holding hands as the train hits us, then this trust magically appears and it's experimental. Yeah, it's a trust under will. Like you've written out your will and you've said what you want to have happen, but then my trust doesn't exist until the will. Right? That's what I did.
I haven't seen that.
I see that a lot on the estate document.
Okay. Let's talk about that.
Check with your advisor. Check that I have an attorney, so we'll check with your estate attorney. Yeah.
I'm curious for myself because I know a lot of this like conversations with families, like either biological or blended way, but I don't ever intend to have children. So are there like any steps in the process where I would have to make extra consideration for like basically like my family, people that I'm not related to?
Oh, that's a great question. You just have to name them specifically. So you could absolutely do that. But you need to have things like full legal names and things like that listed on there, birth dates, things like that, that will ensure that it goes to who you intend it to. I've seen families contest, particularly in situations like that. So just making sure that you're very specific can completely accommodate your wishes.
And the contact info for those people.
Yes, include their addresses and things like that.
Because if your sister is your trustee, but she doesn't know this dude in Egypt, then she needs to go find him.
Yeah.
Quinn lives in Egypt.
Yeah.
For everybody, like, what are you talking about? Just summer in Austin. The famous summer in Austin. Everybody loves it. Okay, so who has worked with an estate attorney? Okay, did you guys like your estate attorney? Okay, so raise your hands again if you worked with your estate attorney and you liked them. Okay, everybody look at those people. After the meeting, go find them. If you want a recommendation. Tara's got one too. I don't necessarily want to like make it a commercial or anything, but those are people that like their attorney. What else do you have?
I think that's it. If anybody has specific questions about their unique circumstances, I'm happy to stay back and answer any of those. But I hope you all walk away feeling like you knew a little bit more than when you came,
Well,
and they
actually,
feel better equipped.
This has been incredibly helpful. Can you please tell us what an executor advisor does?
Oh, for sure. Thank you for that. Thanks for my own plug. I help people through this whole process, whether there is an estate plan or not. They can hire me, and really my objective is to make sure that they prioritize the right things, that they're well organized, they understand if there's court hearings and things like that, that all of those documents are put together in the right way, making sure that they've got all of their bookkeeping done correctly and all of their asset management done correctly, because people are grieving and they have a hard time making logical decisions, staying focused on what the work really needs to be done. And the reason people hire me is because they don't know what good looks like, and they want to make sure that they stay on track, and they want to save time and they want to save money. So that's really the benefit that I offer. I coach them through the whole process. First 30 days typically looks like them forwarding me lots of emails. We're having weekly calls. They're trying to understand what's next, what does good look like, what does my attorney need, what does the court need, and I help get all of those materials together. And then typically after 30 to 60 days, they've got the materials that they need to carry it through to the end. Now I can still hold their hand through to the end, but I typically find that sort of 30 to 60 day mark is really where I can offer the most value. But it's been interesting. I set out to help executors, but then I started getting more and more people reaching out to me about planning. And this is what they said. They said, I know I need a plan, but I don't really know what I need. And I don't want to go sit in the lawyer's office looking like a dummy. I don't want to be sitting in the lawyer's office while they're charging $500 an hour and I'm asking all the dumb questions. I want to know when I walk in, I've got eyes wide open. I know exactly what I need. I know the key questions that I need legal advice on. And so that's what I help prepare. I help have those conversations. And then if they want to continue on with me, once they've gone through that process with their attorney, I'm able to put together a packet for their executor. And it's a guidebook. And it's like everything that we talked about here. It's the audit. It's all of the documents all together in one place. It can be delivered physical or digital. And it's something that I can help them keep up year after year as things change to make sure that their executor is really, really well prepared. So those are sort of the 3 different things that I do at SageVault. Yes, ma'am. It's not. I will say largely the tasks that need to be completed are the same state to state. Now, that being said, if you have somebody in Ohio, somebody mentioned Ohio earlier, maybe there's you. I don't necessarily know an attorney in Ohio, but I have lots of attorneys that I work with. So that's the other piece is that I have attorneys that I work with that they know that when they're getting clients from me, that they know exactly what they're getting. So I'm typically able to offer a discount for doing those estate planning services with a select group of attorneys. So if you had said, I need somebody in Ohio, what do I do? Can you help me manage my estate? I would say, yes, I can help you manage your estate, but first things first, let's make sure that we've got a good partner that is local in Ohio, that knows the county level, not just state level, the county level, the nuances of, particularly if there's not a will, if there's intestacy laws and things like that, that we need to be taken into consideration. I can help typically find an attorney that fits the bill. Yes, ma'am. I don't in Oklahoma. I do in Colorado, but I can certainly probably find one. Yes, Faye.
So, that was my aunt. I had been, it took 9 months for the judge in the court finally gave me the paperwork so that I could actually go. And I was Arkansas. And that was the beginning of my.
Right.
Actually, that's what the middle of my health. That was the beginning of.
And you were listed on their will as the executor?
Well.
Was it contested?
My mom is like, so when she was going through the thing with, because I ended up in my guardian. And so the paperwork with the power of attorney stuff, my mother had been it first, and she didn't want to get anymore.
Oh, got it.
So, because I was first runner up.
Were you listed on the will as first runner up? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So, and then there was, I had to go through 3 judges before, because somebody had been her lawyer, somebody had known my father, my father's dead for 25 years. So they kept recusing themselves.
Huh.
So finally the 3rd guy was like, okay, I don't know you. But then it sort of, oh, your mother has to say she doesn't want it. So I'm like, okay, and then that took like, a day. It wasn't a problem.
Right.
But it just kept going.
Wow.
On. So it took like 9 months before I was official.
Wow. Well, you make a good point, which is that you can list a variety, or you can list multiple people as backup executors. So if you are named executor and you don't want the role, you don't have to take it. What will then happen is it will go to the second person, or the state will appoint someone. But to your point, the first person will have to fill out paperwork and submit it to the court that says, I'm listed as the executor, but I'm declining. Please pass it to the second. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Yeah.
If I get a copy of that, how does this look more like? Not as
I can look at it from the perspective of if I have any concerns, but I cannot give you legal advice. Yeah, for sure. So I'm happy to look at it and point you to an attorney, but really you should go see an attorney and have them take a peek. Yes, yes, for sure. And I'm happy to help you find the right person to do that. And typically they can, bill you for a couple of hours and it's money well spent. If she gives you a copy. Yes.
So some companies offer,
Mm-hmm.
and they give you a discount. Is that any good? I mean,
Like Zillow.com kind of a thing?
well, no, it's associated with, the company that you work with, it's like they give you a discount if you go and get a hotel or whatnot. Is that, like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
I mean, like, are they any good? I mean, or are they just kind of that's gonna leave you, it's like not giving you 100%.
Right. Here's what I'll say, and I'll say willandtrust.com, services like that. There is a nonprofit organization in Texas, I think it's called texaslegal.org, and they'll assign you to, pardon? Okay, thank you. And what I'll say is that something is better than nothing. So if money is what's holding you back or whatever, then like having something and spending the $200, or if it's offered for free, then like it's certainly worth doing that. But if you have honestly anything that adds some sort of complexity, or if you have a big family and there's potential of people contesting things, I mean, I will say in most cases, it's worth going to see an attorney. That's not to say that's not any good, but to your point, it will be basic and it may or may not give you the level of coverage that you want unless you can go in with really specific scenarios that you want to protect against.
Okay, any other questions for Tara?
I wondered if you had any advice for memory care type of situations.
So there are a couple of services. Here's what I recommend related to care for aging parents, memory care or not. There's a variety of services in town. If you're trying to find the right place, there's a woman named Donna Clements, and Donna Clements Senior Solutions is her company, and she can come out and talk to you, talk to your loved one, evaluate their needs. And she has a very reasonable fee, and then she'll just recommend, she's like, instead of going and Googling and going and visiting these 18 memory care facilities, go look at these two. And she's also really familiar with long-term care insurance and Medicaid and things like that. MIR is also another great place in town, MIR. They have a lot of guardianship sorts of services that they offer. So this is a good solution for someone who wants to plan for their aging, but doesn't necessarily have kids or loved ones that are close by that would be able to care for them. And this basically gives you a third-party, unbiased guardian that is looking out for your best interest as you age. CLEMENT.